from the banks of the Grand River, high above the gorge. This is the Buzzr Pod. New releases, industry insiders, out-of-the-box conversations, indie music, with guests from the true north, from the west coast to the east coast, and across the pond and down under. Now, here's Shay.
Hey, Shay here, the Buzzr Indie on the air. Welcome and enjoy. It's episode 9, and we head to Los Angeles. Yet first, trivia play for February the 5th. 5,000 fans greeted the first American rock artist to tour the UK. Bill Haley arrived at Southampton for his 1957 debut UK concert tour. In 1962, Ringo Starr appeared live with the Beatles for the first time after drummer Pete Best became ill. And the Rolling Stones played during the halftime show of the 2006 Super Bowl in Detroit. Jumping back to today, music publisher, talent manager, and industry veteran Patrick Conseil joins us from Los Angeles. Patrick has secured over 200 cuts internationally with artists as diverse as Celine Dion, Desi Valentine, Deepend, Axelle Red, and American authors. His credits include signing Shawn Hook, Richard Walters, and Cobi. Add to these credits, his releases have achieved certified platinum in 20 countries. Patrick owns a publishing company, Pure Pop Music. Pure Pop Music is a music publishing, talent management, and creative consulting company. Welcome, Patrick. Thank you for coming on the show today. I really appreciate you coming and joining our show.
Thank you for having me. You're welcome.
You have the gift of picking hits and developing successful talent from the beginning of your career. What do you see that others don't?
I don't know. I think I'm usually a little ahead of the curve, and sometimes it's been unfortunate for me when I've been signing talent that only got successful after I'd moved on to another company. But, I think I really like real artists. I always listen to a good song, a good vocal performance, and what really turns me on is if the artist can also do it live. So I love to be entertained. I love to go to shows and be blown away by someone on stage.
You must have spent a lot of times in the gig circuit in London when you started. What drew you to London to start there?
The music, really. I was just fresh out of high school, and I wanted to go to England, practice my English. And I was obviously a big fan of British music, and I wanted to experience this firsthand. So I moved to London, and within a week, I got myself a job in a record company. At the time, I didn't really know what a record company was, but I knew that I was going to like it. So my first job was in the mailroom, and slowly I worked really hard and got promoted to talent scout, and after that was promoted to be an A&R manager at A&M Records, and that all happened within a 1-year period. So it was very exciting. A&M was a very, very hot label in the 80s. I had a lot of hits with The Police and Supertramp and John Armour Trading, Squeeze, Joe Jackson. It was a really hip label, so I was so grateful to be part of the team, and I worked really hard.
And the artist Falco was your first signing.
Yeah, at the time, it was the 80s. We still were getting 45s in the mail. And I remember opening the mail one morning and seeing this record coming from Austria by a guy with slick black hair and a really interesting sound. It was almost like an early rap record in a way, and I was so intrigued by this record and took it to my boss right away. Of course, they didn't really get it at first. They were like, why do you want to sign something that has Austrian language on it as opposed to English? But, I fought really hard. And since they had made me pass on a couple of acts that were very successful, they actually let me go to Vienna and sign Falco. So I signed him for 3 albums outside of Austria, Germany, Switzerland, where he already had a deal in place. And I signed him to A&M Records for the rest of the world.
So from the beginning of your career, you developed a reputation to be international in scope.
Yeah, that was always dear to me, maybe because I came from a different country. I just always looked at music to be a global thing, and I didn't really care where it originated from as long as it was providing something interesting and different in the sound, and that's been like that my entire career. I mean, my first signing was Austrian, and we still managed to have a number one record in 21 countries. Then his second record, by the time I'd left A&M by that time, but Rock Me Amadeus was a number one even in America and pretty much in every country around the world. And that surely opened a lot of doors for me in America to move to New York on the back of this number one record.
Yes, definitely. And when you moved to New York, you managed the fabulous Pop-Tarts.
Yes. Well, you know what happened? It was kind of interesting because, again, the Pop-Tarts were a duo. One was English, the other one was American. And they lived in New York, and I moved to New York, and I was like trying to get a deal for the band. But by then, mid-'80s, it was right in the middle of the AIDS crisis, and my two clients were LGBT artists, and nobody really wanted to sign them because of that at the time. So it was a struggle, but I was persevering, and I managed to get them both record deals. We made a record with the Pop-Tarts with the late producer Dan Artman, and they signed to London Records. I also got them a publishing deal with Columbia Pictures Music at the time. That was the Columbia Pictures Studios at a music publishing company. And I also represented this other artist by the name of Zed, and got him a record deal in Germany and we made a record produced by Colin Thurston, who just had a big hit with Duran Duran. But both were really interesting records, but again, too early in the game, ahead of their curve, and they went nowhere pretty much. So that was my end of being a manager. But yeah.
Isn't that the group that was behind RuPaul's Drag Race?
That's it. I mean, the Pop-Tarts really built their own empire. They just had this company called World of Wonder, and I mean, the two of them were so hardworking and really had vision for their company and discovered RuPaul and had a big record with RuPaul called Supermodel, and built RuPaul's career into what is today the Drag Race. That's a really, really successful franchise. So I mean, I knew that talent and they were going to make it in some way or another, and that's the path they took, and they're very successful.
And that empire was founded by Randy Barbato and Fenton Bailey of the Pop-Tarts. How did you meet them?
Correct. Yeah. Fenton and Randy. They had made a single called New York City Beat that I'd heard and really liked. And we had some mutual friends in London. And so I published that very first single and got involved with them in management. And, we were all young and broke and, sharing an apartment in New York and doing everything we could to get some traction in the music industry. It was strange for me because I just came out of a number one record, which really opened a lot of doors for me. But because I took a separate path that was management, it was almost like starting from scratch again once I moved into America.
Has the music scene in New York changed since you first entered the music scene in America, starting out in New York?
Sure. I mean, over the years, I think, there was pre-internet and after internet also. And, yeah, I mean, I used to go to shows pretty much every night of the week. Obviously, those before COVID, those were still happening. But I think as more and more artists are getting discovered through data and having viral hits, it's changed in a way where there's less of a scene. So there are a lot of shows, but there's no scene per se. I mean, those big cities are so gentrified now. It's and so expensive. It's very hard for young artists to, afford to live in New York and just be artists, So I think that's changed in that regard.
So you would be of the opinion that New York is a different experience for an artist than it was when you started.
Yeah, completely. I mean, but again, at the time, to be able to make it, you needed to have a record label, and what's changed now is that a lot of artists are actually able to produce their music at home and to even release their music. So in that sense, it's changed quite a bit. There's not the frustration of being at the mercy of a record label necessarily. Unfortunately, what's happening now is that, yes, you're able to make your record, you're able to release your record, but then you also realize that, you might not have the funds to promote your record. So it's a double-edged sword.
Roughly how much does it cost to promote a record decently?
It really, nowadays it really depends. I mean, I think it depends on the expectations. If you really want to go to radio or not, which is, at the time, I mean, back in the 90s, 2000, you really needed to have a record on the radio to have a hit record. And now, and then when you had a hit record, you could also sell a whole album. And for me as a publisher, that was really interesting because I didn't necessarily need to have the single. I could have a cut on an artist's album and still, make a decent living. Now we're back in the singles market again. And I think, there are two tiers. I mean, there's the independent artist that gets on a lot of playlists and they're able to make a living that way, if they own their masters. And, there's also, people that really still want to go to terrestrial radio or make expensive videos and, do all that. And that costs a lot of money. I mean, radio promotion is not cheap.
What about Moby made you want to work with him? And what about his live performance that drew you to him as an artist?
Oh, again, there was no one else like him. I mean, it was obviously, I went to a rave, and saw Moby perform really late one night. And, I was blown away by the fact that, he was so great live. And when I met with him, the guy had such vision, for his career. He knew exactly where it was going. And that's super important. And I just love the style of music, So, again, I signed him to a publishing deal for 3 albums at Warner Chappell. And the first album he delivered was actually not the sound that I was expecting from him. It was a record called Animal Rights that was really, really great, but it was more of a rock record. And it didn't do that well. But I still picked up his option because I knew eventually he was going to give me the style of music that I really signed him for. And when I heard the demos of the Play record in, I think it was 1997, I was just blown away by the music. And, it took him a while to record that record. I think it took about 2 years. But changed labels and, the record at first was not a huge success, but then the music got licensed in TV shows and movies and later on commercials, and it was unprecedented licensing. And, from then on, radio got on top of it, and it was just like it kept growing and growing into, selling over 12 million albums.
And you also handled the U.S. releases for artists like Billy Ray Martin under Warner.
Yeah, that was part of my job at Warner Chappell. I was the head of international. So pretty much one of my many functions was to look at the artists or songwriters we published out of different territories and see if any of those records I felt could, be successful in America. And at that point, I was going to see record companies in America and say, hey, this record is from the UK or from Germany, but I think they have potential for the States. Can you check it out and, think about releasing it. So, in the case of Amber, I took her to Tommy Boy Record. In the case of Billy Ray Martin, she was already in the Warner system. It was just a matter of convincing a US label to give it a push. And, same with Dido. She was signed by my colleague in London, and I was helping to shop for a record deal in America. And she ended up on Arista.
And you work with artists and songwriters of many genres, artists like Cher.
Yeah, that's the big part of what a publisher does, and used to do even more back in the days. It's like you do a lot of writing collaborations. So you pretty much put writers and producers together, sometimes 2 of them, sometimes 3 of them, and you create songs. And then you go to the artist manager and label and say, do you think this song would be great for your artist? And they say yes or no. Back in the days, we used to get a lot of cuts with artists that were mainly singers and not songwriters. Nowadays, most of the artists get involved in the songwriting. And unless you get the artist in the room when the song is being created, it's getting harder to place songs. But back in the 90s, yes, I was very successful placing songs with artists around the world, from NSYNC to Cher to Kylie Minogue, and what's great being a publisher, it's all about the song. It's not really about, the style. I mean, you can have a ballad and turn it into a dance record. You can have that's what I found exciting. And again, I was always thinking globally. So a lot of my cuts were happening in foreign countries as well.
What makes you say yes or no to the song?
Yeah, a lot of the time when you first hear it, it used to be like just a piano vocal, and then you have to imagine what it could be if a producer took it to a different, genre, and that's what I found really exciting. I had a big record with an artist called Jennifer Paige back then, and it was just a matter of getting her producer with my writers in New York, and then the song was created, and then I heard it, and I felt there was something still missing with the song, and I got a fourth writer who was a lyricist to go and touch it up. And originally, the initial three writers were not too happy with having a fourth person coming in and taking a percentage of the song, but it really made the song a hit. And, just that improvement of the lyrics turned it into a record that people wanted to buy. And there was a song called Crush by Jennifer Paige. And again, it was a top 5 record in every country around the world.
So what was the trigger that made your professional move from Warner to being creative for a Latin publisher in Miami?
My contract ran out. I was in a pretty big position there at Warner Chappell for many years. And then, a lot of those companies were merging back in the days, and there was a merger with AOL, and, they had different plans. And even though I just renewed my contract at the time, the new management just was making changes. And suddenly after 12 years at Warner Chappell, I was out of that company. So I had to reinvent myself for the second time, and I decided to, go to Miami Beach and see what was going on there. And again, I think I was maybe 10 years too early with my love of Latin music, because nobody in the industry outside of Miami really cared about it. And now Latin music is one of the biggest formats in America also. But, for me, it was a change of pace. It was like leaving the big companies and going for doing creative for a very small company there. And that was exciting.
So you went to Reservoir Media and Round Hill Music as a consultant at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So how did the changes affect you?
It killed me once again. Yes, I had a rough time because obviously the company I worked for could not survive the crash of 2008. So they had to fold. As a result of that, I had to short sell my apartment in Miami and come back to New York and reinvent myself for the third time. So yes, it was difficult.
So give me some background on your time with Reservoir Media and Round Hill Music.
Those two companies were just starting, and again, I really felt there was a lot of potential and that they were both going to be super successful. And I was grateful that they both asked me to help them creatively. At the time, they had very small rosters. They were very small companies. And I was a consultant for them for a few years. I was able to facilitate for Reservoir to purchase Reverb Music from the UK, a really, really great music publishing company. And then with my work at Round Hill, they finally asked me to join them full time, which is what I did. And I signed a 3-year contract with Round Hill to be their senior VP of creative there.
What did a normal work week look like during that period?
Busy. Super busy. You get bombarded with, people looking for deals. So you just have to prioritize and you spend a lot of time listening to music, going to shows and seeing which writers you might want to sign. You do a lot of writing collaborations and, I was doing about 20 co-writes a week at that point, plus signing talent, that's when I first signed Rune Westberg and another producer, writer from LA called Morgan Taylor Reid, and I was developing those writer producers.
So after that, you went and founded Pure Pop Music, your own company. How did that come about?
After 3 years, I had moved to LA by that point, and again, it was time for me to be independent again. I felt, it was time. I mean, as publishing companies grow, sometimes they get into the business of buying catalogs, and that's not what I do. So, I wanted to keep doing the development from scratch, and I also wanted to have equity in something. So I decided to, start and have my own business, and also have the freedom to A&R something from the scratch and not have to deal with, outside investors, et cetera, just be in there for the music,
Can we talk about your joint venture with Rune Westberg?
Yeah. So what happened as I started, Pure Pop, Rune Westberg's contract with Roundhill had expired. And so we decided to keep working together and build a new catalog. And I took it to Angry Mob and said, maybe we could do a joint venture together for the signing of Rune Westberg. And they loved that idea, and that's what happened. And at the same time, they also were developing a really cool roster of young writers, and they wanted some help working those writers. So they asked me if I would consult for them as well, which I did. So I've been working with them as a consultant for like 2 years now. And we also did a couple of deals together, this joint venture for Rune Westberg, and also I manage a house music duo called Schmarks and Savvy, and Angry Mob loved them and signed them as well. So yes, I do a lot of business with that company, and I really enjoy them.
And what about the artists that you manage and have signed?
The clients that sign and manage? Well, I have 3 clients. This young artist called Baywood, who is a singer-songwriter from Los Angeles. And, it's been really interesting for me to get a project that I can A&R from scratch, and we make a really good team. And we put out an EP and 3 singles so far. We're going out with a new single in the beginning of January, and an album will follow up for May, And I also have Addie Hamilton, who is a really interesting artist, singer-songwriter. We're also coming up with a first single in the beginning of the year. And Schmarks and Savvy, the house duo I was talking about, they just had a big viral hit with a big international DJ called Blau. And the song is already streamed like 14 million, and they're doing really well.
That's awesome, Patrick. Have the company goals changed since the pandemic?
Nothing has changed for me too much, because my clients are not really touring artists. I feel really bad for the artists that are just relying on touring because they can't play live right now. So, I'm trying as much as I can to turn into a positive and get my artists to rehearse now that they're home as much as possible. So when we're able to play live again, they're ready with a solid show. And it's also a good time to concentrate on, doing a lot of remote co-writes and stay as active as possible and promote the singles you put out as much as you can.
That's nice to hear something positive from somebody in the industry. That's awesome.
Yeah, you have to be.
Pure Pop Music has done work with the studio-based Penn Music Group.
Well, I also have an additional consultancy with a company called Penn Music Group. So pretty much like what I do at Angry Mob, I also work for their writers, and I've been doing some really good collaborations for some of their writers. Shawn Hook being one of them. She had a very big record a few years ago with a band called Bittersweet, and she's reviving that act. And I put her together with one of my Angry Mob producers. The two of them, got into the studio. It was magic, and they wrote and produced the whole album together. So that's coming out 2021. That's going to be a very exciting record. And as I said, I sort of became a label by accident. So I'm putting out singles and working at it every day and trying to get on podcasts like your show and independent radio shows and doing everything I can and working with our sync department, trying to place music into TV shows and movies and, ads, especially when they slowly come back now when the pandemic is over,
Oh, yeah, definitely. Are you continuing to add to the Pure Pop music catalog?
I'm trying to, and sometimes it's just a matter of budget. So, sometimes I just do one-offs. There's a young band on the East Coast called Ito and the Moonlight Hippies. They had one song I really believed in, and I just picked it up as a one-off single and helped them promote that, So, I don't really do long-term deals necessarily because I don't really have the finances to make it worth it for an artist to sign long-term. I don't feel, So We're taking it one song at a time or a few songs at a time.
So what do you look for when you sign an artist long-term?
Someone who is doing something a little different, someone that really wants it and has a vision of where they want to be, and someone who is not frightened to put the work into it. It's almost like being an artist nowadays is almost like going to a job. I mean, you need to work at your craft every single day, and you have to be on social media and just keep up your brand, and it's a lot of work, but someone that realizes that it's not just about recording a single, releasing it, and hoping it sticks,
Do you prefer publishing over management or a blend of the two worlds?
I'm a publisher at heart. That's what I like. And I told myself 20 years ago, I'm never going to do management again. But then again, it just so happened that I met those two artists that I'm passionate about. And, they did not have management and they needed help. And I just got involved.
Well, I've heard both of their music and what's coming out this year. Outstanding artists.
Thank you so much. I think they're great. Yes.
So looking to the future, Patrick, do you think technology will be positive for the industry or an obstacle?
I think so. I think, that's another thing that young artists and writers have to keep in mind is that as technology evolves, they need to get their data in order. They need to, if they want to make money and collect money from their music, they have to make sure they give the information that's needed to the companies that are collecting that money. So they need to know who they're writing with, their legal names, but also if they are published, who their publishers are. They need to know what PRO their co-writers are with and get their IP numbers. They have to be organized, especially if they don't have managers or publishers.
In particular with copyright?
Yes, exactly. It's moving so fast, and there's a lot of people using music that's not licensed, so you really have to be on top of it. And my advice to a lot of them is to have a little bit of a business mind as well as the artistic mind, more than ever, because it's moving very fast.
Well, the formation of the MLC is a positive move for the industry.
Yes, I think it's going to be really great. I mean, already like the NMPA, the National Music Publishing Association, has done a lot of great work and trying to get the rates for the songwriters and publishers to go up. Apple Music has been great. And, unfortunately, Spotify has been reneging on that. So it's a constant battle, But on the songwriter level, I think organizations like Songwriters of America, SONA, are really good places for songwriters to join and get educated and also network with a lot of great songwriters.
So has the pandemic leveled the playing field for indie artists?
The pandemic? I don't know. I think a lot of people that maybe were not in there for the long run are not doing it anymore. I mean, right now we have 40,000 songs being released every day. I think maybe, unfortunately, a lot of people are not going to be able to live from it and are going to have to rethink the way they, is it really what they want to do, And then that's why it's more important than ever for artists to be unique and just bring something new to the party, because it's so easy to get lost in the crowd.
So what changes do you see for the music industry?
Well, hopefully better rates for the especially the writers. And I think, a lot of the time everything is cyclical. I think, when stages open up again, hopefully, some of the signings are going to be done also because the act is really wonderful live, as opposed to just, having a viral video on TikTok or just having good numbers, For me, I like to look at the whole picture, not just sign based on data.
Do you believe that residences will become popular?
I hope so. Yeah, I think there are great ways to build an artist. Always been and always will be. But first, we need to get this virus under control, and we need to support our stages and make sure that live music comes back,
Patrick, what advice would you give someone that wants to be a publisher or talent manager?
Well, don't expect to make money too quickly. Just don't go in there just because it seems like sexy from the outside, but just go in there because you really have a vision and you want to, pay your dues, It takes good ear, but it takes also a lot of work, And for the young artists also, my advice to them is look at every platforms available for exposure of your music. A lot of young artists just want to be on Spotify. That's all they care about. And it's just one part of the puzzle. There's other platforms, and you just have to hit every angle.
Where's the best platform to connect with you and follow Pure Pop Music?
Definitely through my socials, through the Pure Pop Music LLC Facebook, or also by leaving an email through my website, www.purepopmusic.com.
Okay, great. Thank you, Patrick, for joining our show today.
You're very welcome.
It was an incredible discussion, and I hope that people listening out there will get a lot of value.
Oh, you're very welcome, and I hope your listeners enjoy it, and they can email me if they have specific questions.
And I'm truly honored to have you as a guest on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for tuning in. Next episode is February the 9th. Canadian rock and roll band The Jailbirds are on the show. The Jailbirds album, Watery Grave, established the band as a Canadian rock indie band to follow. This group is awesome. The band incorporates 70s and 90s rock influences into their own music, and their sound is unique. So catch you at the pod on February the 9th, the Buzzer Pod, on air indie, from my pad to yours, over the airwaves. Subscribe feeds at thebuzzrpod.com. Cheers.